chat window, and Eliza will give you a hand, or I will jump back in and we'll make sure you can see and hear. Again, please feel free to use your cameras. We love to see people, but definitely mute and unmute yourself as we're having conversation, okay? This is not meant to be a WebEx webinar where we just talk to you. This is meant to be interactive, gather some information, and get some questions answered for you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and advance into the presentation. And I'm going to turn this over to Lindsay Marsh to kind of begin our journey through.
Thank you, Lil. Welcome, everyone. We're really pleased that so many of you have joined us today. We're going to go over, some of these slides are actually from our core presentation. We will be jumping around the country starting next week to do a core presentation on the census for state associations. So several of you have invited us to join you. Thank you for that. But we also wanted to talk about what state associations can do now for the census to prepare for everything that's coming up in the next 15 months or so, and to get everybody on the same page. So with that, let's just dive right in with the quick census overview. One of the things we're really hoping to do with the presentation is engage our audiences. We don't want to have anybody sitting up at the front of a lecture stern talking at people. So we're going to ask people what they know about the census. Does anybody want to chime in and tell us what the census means to you in your state? How interactive will our group be today?
Remember to unmute yourself, please. That's
okay.
Or chat, send their chats as well in the chat box.
Oh, right. If you chat at Liza, she will read them for us. She doesn't know that she's going to do that, but I just asked her to. Okay, we'll just move on then. But we will be asking people because we want it to be an interactive participatory session because we want people to be engaged. So that's part of why this slide's here. Let's just move on. Next. So the census, if you don't know, is something that we do every year in this country, and we have been doing every year since 1790, I believe. Every year we count every person who lives in the United States. They do not have to be citizens. They can be illegal immigrants or documented immigrants. They can be anyone who lives in the United States on April 1st, 2020. That's who we are counting next year. Next slide, please. When we have this data, so the data will be aggregated and it will be delivered to the President in December of 2020. So census forms will be recorded and received up until, I think, the end of July. I think the exact date's the 20th. And then what they do with that data is use it to apportion representation. So there are several states out there that might be possibly gaining a state representative in the House of Representatives. I know Minnesota is at a risk of losing a House of Representatives delegate. Whereas like Denver, Colorado is looking at possibly gaining a state representative because our population, I live in Denver, for those of you who don't know, our population has boomed. So they use the census data to apportion representation among states. They also use this data to draw congressional lines. For those of you who have heard the term gerrymandering, that's what state legislatures use the census data for, to draw their district lines. Gerrymandering is the practice of drawing those lines to favor one political party or another. The census is used to distribute federal dollars to the states, which is one of the reasons that we're very interested in this process. There will be about $800 billion apportioned annually based on the 2020 census data. We use the census data as a nation for government planning, decisions at all levels. We use it to decide where to put businesses and government entities, and we also use it to enforce voting rights and civil rights legislation. So it's a pretty important process that we go through as a nation. Let's go to the next slide.
Sorry.
It's okay. And if you do have questions, please don't be shy. We really don't want people to just sit and listen if you've got questions. This is another a slide that talks about how the census interacts in a local community. It's not just on the federal level. I mean, it is the federal level, but it trickles down into local communities. public safety in schools, new hospitals. Where do you put a new hospital? Where do we need a new school? That kind of information is all derived from the census data that we have available. Next.
And if I can, Lindsay, let me just chime in.
Please.
And say that one of the things that Alan has noted is this is why this is so important to our local CAAs, is these things drive your local data, which we all use for everything. We're going to come to more of that, but I want to highlight here when we say census in the community, that's from the core presentation to make sure our agencies know just how important getting an accurate count is to them, specifically to them.
Yep. So as I mentioned, April 1st, 2020 is National Census Day. That's a day that we will have nationwide events encouraging people to fill out their census. And that's actually also the snapshot day. So that's the day that people, if you move on April 2nd, you would fill out the census form based on where you lived on April 1st. And they do that to make sure that people are consistent with their data. So April 1st next year is a really important date for everybody. And then they give everybody until May, and that's when we start knocking doors. So the census this year is going to be largely online. There will be paper forms mailed out to places as well, but largely it's going to be online, and that's actually to increase access, although for some of our communities that's a real barrier, which we're going to get to. Next slide, please. So I already mentioned that 800 billion. And it's an important number. That number encompasses Medicaid and Medicare. It encompasses CSBG, SSBG, LIHEAP funds, Community Economic Development funds, TANF numbers, trying to think of Head Start numbers. Lots and lots and lots of programs are apportioned based on this money. And the census will hire hundreds of thousands of people and spend over $15 billion to complete the census. Over the last 40 years, 50 years, the price of getting every person to respond has dramatically increased. And this is in part because people are harder to find, people are busy. The American life and culture is making things like this a little bit more difficult. And we also have a lot of hard-to-reach populations. We have transient people, we have people who are homeless, we have people who are poor, who move around a lot because they get evicted. We have people who have 4 jobs, and so filling out a census form isn't at the top of their priority list. There are lots and lots of reasons why people are hard to count, and that accounts for the dramatic increase in how much it costs to return a single household. Next slide. So Lil mentioned this already. Why does it matter to us? Why has the partnership taken the step of creating a team and hiring experts to talk about all of this? CSBG funding is a huge part of this. It will determine how much funding we get for CSBG in part, and it will help the Office of Community Services apportion that. And obviously, I know that there's a formula, but it's all tied together. And we've already touched upon the historically hard to count and why it's important that the CAAs are involved in this process, because you guys have, your members actually have the access to these networks. Next slide. Again, just driving home that the census drives dollars. All of this money relies upon the data that we will collect in the next 15 months to do this. 9% of the $864 billion in total federal program spending will come down to the programs that the CAAs use the most. So again, TANF, Section 8, Head Start, LIHEAP, CSBG, SSBG, rural programs, aging programs. It's important. All right, next slide. So the environment that we're facing is that we have these hard to count populations. HTC is the acronym for that. You'll hear that a lot from us. People move around, people are fiscally constrained, technology is rapidly changing. The switch to online census forms is overall a positive aspect, because it means that the census can reach a large population without having to print paper forms and send out paper forms, but it does mean that people who are unwired or have unstable connections to the internet might have problems returning their forms. They also have, some people have a distrust in government. Today, the Supreme Court saw heard arguments on whether or not to include a census question that pertained to American citizenship. And the argument is that 6.5 million people will just not answer the census forms if that question is included, because several of them are illegal or have no documentation, and they are worried that ICE will show up at their doorstep if they fill out the census correctly and accurately. So there's a big push towards not including that question right now. We'll see what the Supreme Court comes out with, but that's going on today. We'll ask. Okay. Is anyone working on any of these issues yet in their states? Should have asked that earlier. Anyone? Guys are just quiet today. Okay.
Again, I put it in the chat, and we're offering to be there at your conferences, as you will have heard at different points. But we have some states that are way out in front. In some states like Alabama, they're leading the census count, and you'll hear more about that later in their states. Some folks aren't working on this at all yet, but we are interested in taking the temperature of our network right now to see how many community action associations and therefore agencies are already beginning to be engaged in this work in terms of making sure that we are part of getting our folks counted. Mm-hmm. So feel free to use the chat.
Thank you, Lo. All right, we'll just move along. So the hard to count populations are hard to locate, hard to persuade, hard to interview, hard to contact. Sometimes they're all four. And again, these are people that community action agencies traditionally serve. Next slide, please.
Before we leave that last slide,
you want to go back? Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to make a small change in the upper right-hand quadrant where you have here illegally. Can we reword that to undocumented?
Sure, we can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on. And one more.
I do think this one is worth pointing out, though, just that of the hard-to-count populations, the reasons why they're hard to count are these various reasons I've mentioned before, and so that what ends up meaning that these are the types of people, the groups of people that kind of meet those categories, and these are the groups of people that very much reflect the groups of people that are served by community action agencies. The rural population, a lot of the community action agencies exist in rural communities. Low-income households are definitely a hard-to-count group. Young children, most community action agencies have Head Start serving young children, seniors, homeless. So this also reads exactly like a list of the clients that are served by community action, but they're also very much the hard-to-count population as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have this big count coming up. What are we doing about it? What's being done out there? A lot, actually. So the Census Bureau is large and out front. There's obviously the government agency spending $15 billion to count people. Census Counts is a nationwide hub organization that is building a partnership across the country to help get out the count. You've heard of get out the vote. We're not doing that. We're getting out the count. And they have partner organizations on the national level and on the state level and local level all over the country that are doing some work that we'll get into in a minute. And then why you're here today is because you're a member of the partnership. And what we have our own program here for the Census Count. Next.
Lindsay, we do have a couple of chats coming in. I just want to let you know. Pennsylvania does have a CAA's executive director who is on the governor's census committee. And in North Dakota, Andrea is actually serving on the Governor's Census Committee, and they've applied for funding to establish a complete count committee. They've been working with their state folks and the U.S. Census folks, just to let you know what's going on in the background.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for chiming in, folks. So the census, by this time next year, the census will have 250 offices across the country. There are 6 regions around the country. I'm not going to get them all, but I know Pennsylvania, New York, Colorado has one, California has one, and then they have the smaller regional offices. So there will be a census area office near you and near your members. We've already talked about how the census can be completed online and by mail. They will also have phone operators standing by who speak dozens of languages to make sure that every person who resides in the United States can be counted. You can go to census.gov, but 2020census.gov is the hub for next year's activities. Census.gov, you can find the 2010 census results and a lot of historical data. But 2020census.gov is where everything is being staged for the coming count. Next, please. Liza, can you switch, or did I freeze?
It did switch. It's a new
Oh, it did switch. Okay. Staring at them. Okay, so with the Census Bureau, there's some things that state associations can do. You can sign up to become a census partner. And we will be sending around this presentation. We put the hyperlinks in specifically so people could take it after this presentation and have that access. You can sign up as a census partner, which means that you will help engage and help inform community action agencies on how to go about promoting the census. You can invite the census to come speak at your next association meeting. Several of you already have statewide complete count committees. You can join one or create one. You can also encourage local level complete count committees. I think there's a slide about complete count committees, so I'm going to hold on that. There are also jobs with the census. They are going to hire over 100,000 people, and one of the best ways for us to make sure that our people get counted is to make sure that the people counting look like our people. So we encourage people to go to the census.gov website and apply for jobs, and encourage community action agency clients to sign up for those jobs as well. It's kind of a double-edged sword. We can get people employed and to make sure that our communities are reflected in the people who are doing the counting. Next. Right, complete count committees. So these are our local committees. Well, they're local and state, so state organizations that are encouraging statewide counts, but the local ones are really crucial because these are going to be people who are trusted by the customers of a community action agency. So these are people who are leaders in the community that we are encouraging to form committees between local governments, communities, and community action agency leadership and nonprofit leadership to make sure that we get the word out and to make sure that there is an action plan for each community to have the census counted. Next. The Census Bureau has an extensive outreach toolkit. They have a lot of materials on their website. This is one of them. We have other resources that we'll pass out as well, but this is just one of their slides and a basic for you that shows some of the things that they're going to have. So not only do they have phone operators who speak different languages, they also have different fact sheets on frequently asked questions. Do people come to my house? Do I have to fill it out if I'm not an American citizen? Things like that. So there's lots of information available. So we are encouraging all of you to contact your local regional office and meet your community engagement staff because, again, there will be 250 offices around the country. Invite them to come to your conferences and events. You can be a partner on the website, form a complete count committee, and refer to the census for people to find jobs. That's a mouthful. Next. The next, oh, well, before I move on to the census counts, do we have any questions or comments or anything to add that I have missed? Jim, Alan, Lou, or participants? Okay.
Hi, Lindsay. This is Andrea from North Dakota. I'm the State Association Director in North Dakota, and we're working on establishing a complete count committee. Where do is there, how do I want to say it, is there specific community action resources regarding complete count committees? Because I did find information on the U.S. website, but is there an example that exists within our network of how CAP agencies have done complete count work?
Jim, do you have more detailed information on that? Can you chime in?
Well, as Lou mentioned, our community action state association people are in leadership positions on the state complete count committee in Alabama and in Pennsylvania. The state complete count committee is formed either by a administrative action by the governor or by a legislative action by the state legislature, or both. So we do have a list of the state complete count committee and local complete count committee contacts. There are about 35 active state complete count committees, and we're encouraging you at the state association level, contact them, volunteer to be on that committee. There are about 400 local complete count committees, and we have a spreadsheet that we can share with you so you can look and see which local communities already have a complete count committee in formation, and share that with the CAAs in that area and encourage them to go join. So the complete count committees are important for two reasons. One is, as Lindsay described, because they are the official Census Bureau mechanism for pulling organizations together and reaching out. The other reason they're important is because the foundations have funded the partnership and these 15 other national hub organizations, like the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, like the Color of Change, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, etc. And we want to strengthen our relationships between community action and these national hubs and their organizations at the state and local level. This is a wonderful opportunity to create some new partnerships, new friends, new advocacy coalitions. So we want you to reach out to these hub organizations in your area as well, and we'll be providing you with contact information for them. That's all I have to say on the hubs and out.
Thanks. Andrea, I just wanted to add too, we do have a lot of those lists and resources that Jim mentioned that will be shared at the end of the presentation. Another resource that's listed there is to the website for I think it's the National Association for State Legislators, and on that website they have a number of resources on how to form a complete count committee. There's one out of Minnesota that is really helpful, we can direct you to that as well. It's not for the community action perspective, but they go through all the action steps, so it's applicable too for community action.
And Andrea, there are a couple of other resources that we'll get to in a few minutes as well.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the second player in the census, the community action census world is the Census Counts 2020 group. Right now there are over 15 national hub organizations, and they are garnering all of our energies and all of our expertise to not recreate the wheel. So they're creating toolkits, they're organizing people to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and we're not being redundant, but we're also making sure we cover all of our bases. Let's move on. These are some of the partners. Obviously, the Community Action Partnership is one of them. State Voices is an important one for the statewide complete count committees. But all of these people have a vested interest either because their membership is a hard to count population traditionally, or because they they believe in fairness and that every voice should count and every person should be counted. Liza, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So just to continue on explaining the Census Count campaign, you just saw a list of some of the national partners, and this is just to sort of describe how the campaign is structured. So it sort of starts at the top level and with the hub of hubs, which is the Census Count campaign itself, which is led by the Leadership Council. And then we've got the national hubs, which we just saw a list of some of those over 15 organizations at this point representing various hard-to-count populations. And then we go down to the state level, and there's a state Count Action Network, which has representatives at the state level organizing state efforts to get out the count. And then ultimately, that's going to hopefully lead to a local action. So we just wanted to let you know about the structure because we wanted to kind of point out where the role of state level activities are played, where state level activity plays a role in this structure. So moving forward, I'll turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
Okay. So the state hubs are, there's a Count Action Network lead in your state. We are going to circulate that list along with this PowerPoint and the list of complete count committees, lots of state acronyms. We're going to circulate all of this after the presentation, but there are state hubs that are already in the works, and you can contact those folks and be a part of that network as well. And if there are other entities, other resources like state votes and other members of the Census Counts organization, we encourage people to talk to those folks as well to see what they're doing and what resources they have available. And there's a pledge. So the Census Counts website has a pledge that we are encouraging people to take that vows that you will be counted and will encourage others to be counted as well. So the higher we get that number, the better, because we have more people who are dedicated to doing this.
And also, by taking the pledge, you are able to kind of sign on to the campaign listserv and
get information.
Continue to get updates and resources about what you guys can do to get out the vote. Get out the count.
I know, we're getting there. We're relatively new with the vernacular. So that brings us to what we are doing. So I think that, Jim, you are the mastermind behind most of this. We've built a team. So Liza, Lil, and I are the three who are at the partnership. Alan and Jim are our consultants on this. And we are out there to educate and increase the awareness of the census across the network. Many of you have already invited us to your state association meetings. We are kicking that off next week, and we'll have a very busy May because it's Community Action Awareness Month. We are trying to get the network activated and mobilized to help us in this effort. And we're trying to make sure that you have the materials that you need to conduct this outreach. We will be doing population-specific webinars. So the first phase of this will be us doing state association meetings because a lot of them are bunched between May and June and July. Obviously, we will have a big presence at the partnership's annual meeting in Chicago at the end of August. And then we will be doing population-specific webinars. So if your state has a large population of hard-to-count Asian Americans, we're going to do presentations on how to talk to those communities and what messaging works with those communities. So you can look for that. There are other training materials that we have available that will be on our website and that the Census Counts 2020 website will have as well. We are creating a census-specific e-news listserv so we can make sure that people who are interested in this topic have information sent to you regularly to keep you abreast of the information that's coming out and the actions that are being taken. We have a social media campaign, so we will be tweeting and posting on Facebook and Instagram for the partnership. We're still working out our communications plan. We might also have a census-specific channel, and if we do, we'll let people know. And we're going to have frontline staff frequently ask questions and researchers for that. So the questions about, can I fill out someone's census form? Can I sit down at a computer with someone who's hard to count, who's illiterate, and fill out the form for you? The answer is no. But we're going to have frequently asked questions and role-play scenarios for frontline staffers who are talking to the populations we're trying to reach. We also have convened a working group, census working group. If anyone would like to join the census working group who is not already on it, you're welcome to do so. Please reach out to me. These are states that have 9 of the largest hard-to-count populations in the country. We've also invited Alabama to join us because Alabama is far and above one of the most organized states on this matter right now. And some of the things that they're doing are truly great, and we think that they'd be a great resource for the rest of the country. We will be convening with them. I'm thinking we're probably going to do that at least monthly, but they will be resources for everyone. Next, videos. We are producing some videos for those frontline staff members on how to talk to people. Liza or Lil or Jim or Alan, do any of you have a little bit more information to talk about this one?
Hi, this is Jim again. The foundations that funded the Census Counts 2020 and all the hub organizations also funded some research on what are the concerns people have about the census and what are the messages that help them resolve those concerns and decide to participate in the census. So we took that research and turned it into scripts for frontline workers to practice, and we're also making videos off of those scripts. So there's about 9 major concerns that people have identified, and there's about 9 very short messages that address those concerns, 2, 3, 4 sentences each. And we want to present those in the video, and we want to present those in narrative form for frontline workers to practice on the premise that the way to get messages across is to have people practice getting the messages across. So this is some of the background material that Lindsay mentioned that will be made available to you.
Thank you, Jim. All right.
If I can tail onto that?
Yes, please.
I think, and Lindsay has touched on it, but I really want to circle back with it on these videos. The partnership's role in this is not to recreate all the information that the hubs are doing or that the census is doing. The challenge that we've found, and Jim and Alan have done a huge amount of the legwork on this, the partnership really wants to extend its thanks for the expertise and the time. There are literally thousands of resources. The census has gone way down deep in the water. I see Jim losing it with laughter on the screen. We're talking about thousands of publications. The partnership's role is to both activate our network. That's what the funders are asking us to do because we interact every day with the hardest to count folks in the country. Our agencies are the front line of hard to count. Whether or not that's our primary role with poverty or not, that's the fact. That's where the hard to count people live, often in poverty, often with us. Our role is to curate these resources, update you, supply some videos on specific messaging for community action, and get that information in your hands in actionable ways, ways that mean you don't have to read 1,000 pages of census material or even check out 16 different PDFs. We have a list. This partnership has already started. Liza has put a lot of effort on the partnership site to current resources, and we're going to have more. So I want to really encourage you to start thinking about how we can help agencies with you use these resources. Back to you, Lindsay.
You are welcome. You are all welcome to read all of this material if you're so inclined. We can flood your inbox if you want, but we're doing that for you in the meantime. Okay, as I mentioned, we have social media campaigns right now. It's CA Partnership, Twitter and Instagram. And we are going to create a Facebook group specifically, a private Facebook group specifically for community action agencies and state associations to be able to communicate with people who are doing the same work. So please watch for that. We are going to encourage people to join that. So you can ask a question and get an answer, and it might be from another practitioner, it might be from an expert, subject matter expert, it might be from us, but we're going to build a group forums to make sure that people have access to information. So we are encouraging people to use our resources to educate and increase awareness of the census in your state. We'd like you to find out what populations are hard to count in your neighborhoods and why. We've got some resources for that, but CUNY has put together hard to count maps that go down to a granular level with census tracts. So you can figure out who in your area is hard to count and hopefully figure out why that is so you can figure out how to get them to participate. You can look at census data and figure out how the census drives dollars to your community action agencies, period, full stop. You can see that train. So we encourage people to do that just so you can impress upon the community action agencies and the frontline staff how important this is. Invite us to come see you. We would love to come out and do a census training and to meet your frontline staffers and meet you in person. Again, several of you have already done that, but we have more bandwidth to do some more of those trainings. And we encourage you to take our information and either arrange for us to do a webinar for your community action agencies or do one yourself to have them be trained on how to do the census participation outreach. All right, what else can you do? So, Jim, I'm going to ask you to talk about this for a minute in a second. We understand that the legislative sessions are wrapping up in some states, and it's not possible for anyone to do this. But for those of you who still have legislative sessions active, we really want to impress upon you that this is something that can be done. The state legislatures can appropriate additional funds for census outreach. It might sound like a lot of money that we're spending $15 billion as a nation to do this count, but it doesn't do the job. I'm actually, I don't have it at my fingertips what the number is of how many people they guesstimate were uncounted in the 2010 census. But we need every man on deck to do this, and we need every dollar we can get to appropriate this research. So we're encouraging people to talk to their state legislatures about appropriating additional resources to do this. Establish a complete count program. Well, that's fine. We can move on. It's just.
No, okay. I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
Affirm access to residential buildings. This is something that state legislatures can do. I actually have knocked a lot of doors for political campaigns in my day, and one of the things that we get flummoxed by are closed gated communities, or communities that feel like solicitation isn't just a door-to-door salesman, it's also anybody who knocks on your door for any reason. So having your state legislature affirm that you can go to residential buildings regardless of their posted status is really important. And we want our state legislators to encourage their constituents to do census awareness as well. Jim, do you have something to add about state legislative efforts?
I just wanted to say in California, for example, the state legislature appropriated $92 million for supplementary outreach activity, and they have funded a variety of organizations to assist in that outreach activity. If you're going to get money from your legislatures, most state legislatures only allow money bills to be introduced early in the session. Most of them have a deadline date like July 1 at the absolute latest that a money bill can be introduced. So if you're even thinking about asking your state legislature to invest in your outreach activities or the outreach activities of the other hub organizations, get 2 or 3 of the hub organizations together, go to your state legislature and ask them for some money now, even though you're spending it until this fall or winter. And Liza mentioned the National Council of State Legislatures has a running total of the number of states that have created state count committees, that have appropriated money, et cetera. You can go up on the NCSL website, find out if anything has been done in your state. If it has, deal yourself in. If it hasn't, try to stir the pot.
Yeah, actually, Jim, since you mentioned it, I just pulled up the next slide, which has a snapshot of exactly what you're talking about, and also sort of demonstrates the different sorts of actions that can be made at that state level, from appropriating funds for just broad census work, which is being done in 18 states. It sometimes can be done through executive order, just to legislate around census outreach, and then there's sometimes state legislation around complete count committees, which Jim talked about earlier. And so this is the current number of states that have these sorts of activities, and the link to finding out more of that information there as well.
That's excellent information. We do have a question coming in from the group. Terry, I'm going to unmute you, and I have, and if you will try to unmute yourself because it keeps turning red. Terry Bearden has got a question for us.
Hi, Terry Bearden with the Arkansas Community Action Agencies Association. Sorry, I joined a little bit late, so you may have already shared this information, but you just mentioned that there are some hard-to-count maps available. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because our agencies in Arkansas plan to be very involved in increasing the number of people who participate in the census.
Excellent. It's CUNY, which has put together a granular tract level map. So there's a link at the bottom of this presentation to those maps, and we'll go over that and make sure you have that information so you can look up all of the tracts in your state that are hard to count.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's a very detailed site, and it's actually great because it gives you an idea of why those people are hard to count. So it could be that they don't have, they're rural, they don't have access to internet. It could be that they're transient. It could be that they don't speak English, or whatever the case may be. So they kind of give you some detail as to why, which is also helpful.
Okay, thank you. I plan to pull a similar map using the Community Action hub, but knowing that somebody else has already done that heavy lifting is really good to hear.
Yep, and Liza just sent that to everyone, so everyone has that in the chat. And again, it's at the bottom of this, it's at the end of this presentation under resources.
All right, great, thank you.
All right, so this was actually, this slide is a great find by Liza today. Governor executive orders, state legislation, all of those things are avenues for you to get resources to do your counts. Next slide. So in order to do that, the first thing you need to do is figure out your legislative session dates if you don't know. Unfortunately, we are getting late in a traditional legislative session. So if people are going to do this, you're going to need to do it pretty quickly. A good place to start, if you don't know where to start, is to talk to your local state legislator. So your state rep, your state senator. We can help you determine who, if you don't know who, so you can reach out to us and we'll help with that. And then we will send out resources to help you find other people who are doing some of this work so you can go en masse. The promised resource list. So the list of state, let's see if I can do all these acronyms, complete count committees and local complete count committees. The state CAN network action contacts, and that's Count Awareness Network. Did I do that right?
Count Action Network.
Count Action Network, so close. The CUNY Hard to Count maps. The CBPB report, and this one talks about what kind of federal aid state and local governments get. So this is where that $800 billion is going. A resource, it's actually the Preparing for the 2020 Census is a nice PDF about how legislators can help in the efforts, and the additional resources from the NCSL. Is this our last slide? Oh, wow. Okay. This is our last slide. We will also send around contact information for Liza and Lil and myself. I think most of you know Jim and Alan, but we'll include their information as well. We've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. Please ask us anything or tell us what you're doing.
This is Alan. I was thinking that maybe I can add 3 or 4 slides to this presentation on the hard-to-count map, and it gives you some instructions as to how to access it and how to use it. What do you think of that idea?
I think that's great. You can email me and Liza and Lil offline.
I can do that today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, these tools are really exciting, and as we've come on board as a partnership team to try to help curate all this research and turn it into a manageable presentation and action steps for folks, we are looking and will be looking, especially in the earliest sessions, for those of you with early conferences, we will really be looking for feedback on our materials as well as on census, issues and questions. Is this the best way to reach out? Once we get through conference season, there are plans to do more with the videos and the webinars and get things out that direction. And so moving through all of this, we have a much broader presentation with much more detail, as Alan was suggesting, in how to use the maps for when we are live with audiences, where we can actually say, okay, great, let's pull up your map. Let's work on this. So this is really just an introduction, and you are our first group. So we are very interested in your feedback here and moving forward on this. We've had a question come in about money to support these efforts. That's a very valid question. This takes time. This is in addition to other efforts. We are putting together lists of the possibilities. State money has been the first and foremost one that most folks have used, and I would defer back to Jim and Alan if there are other avenues, but I would suggest local foundations would have a vested interest in that. Anyone who relies on census data is going to have a vested interest in having good data out there that really reflects their communities. Alan or Jim, anything you'd like to add to that in terms of money to support these census outreach efforts? I'm going to unmute them. I think I'm not seeing.
There you go. Yeah, in 2010
thank you. I knew it was depends on you.
There you go. The community foundations were very active in funding local efforts to increase outreach for exactly the reasons that you just mentioned, Lil. The census is vitally important to local governments and all nonprofits that use any federal financing to support their activities, and the community foundations really stepped up in 2010 and in 2000 to finance local outreach, marketing, digital campaigns, etc. So contact your local community foundation, right?
I think so, and for those communities that I've lived in a couple and worked in them in community action that literally don't have a community foundation, your statewide foundations too, but also I think it might be interesting to talk to local government. Local government has a hugely vested interest in this because their shares of federal dollars are determined by the census, not just our program dollars, very much local government, and it's been my personal experience that it's easier to get at least small chunks of money out of there, and they usually have a pretty good relationship with their local cap agency.
Right.
So that could be an excellent avenue, and being a member of the hubs and part of the Get Out the Count lends credibility to asking for help. Here is this big national campaign. We're the arm of it here. Help us help you by getting good numbers. I think that's a pretty good pitch.
I agree.
Any other questions from the field, either by chat or please do feel free to unmute you. Unmute yourself. I'm sorry, that was ungrammatical.
Lil, I think we're also curious as to what else we can do. So if anybody has an idea of how the partnership can be a resource for you on this, please ask us, let us know. I asked Liza to put the contact us slide back up. We haven't added Jim or Alan to this yet. We will. but please, we want to make this a two-way communication stream. We definitely want to input and to know what will be most interesting and most helpful for you as we embark on this adventure. So don't be shy.
I just wanted to mention a metaphor that we've used among our team, that running the census is very much like running a presidential campaign, in that you start with a group of aspirations and ideas and a few people, and then you build this organization in every state from the ground up, and you build this huge apparatus, and you have all these people running around, and then by August of 2020, the 420,000 enumerators that the Census Bureau will have in the field finish their work, they wrap it up, and they disappear. Kaboom! And the infrastructures that we are building now go dormant until the next census, 10 years from now. So we are creating a huge organization nationwide through the Census Bureau, through the hub organizations, and through the partnership, these three streams of information coming at you, and building a huge apparatus that will be cranking up this fall and this winter, and it'll go roaring into action in March of next year, roars until August, and then kapoof, the data all goes into the Census Bureau.
Jim, that's awesome. And I love the idea of a funnel, right? That's the partnership's role, is we funnel that information to you so you don't get a fire hose of it.
Right.
I think I'd like to close us and bring us back to Lindsay. One thing I forgot in our introductions, many of you know me from previous work together. You all know Jim and Alan. And many of you have met Liza in her last few years as first a Vista with the partnership and now on staff. Lindsay has come to us for this project. But what I think would be interesting for folks to know is we used to work in OCS with our own Jeannie Chaffin, who is working with us on the learning communities, and took Jeannie's word for it that we were a great place to come and be, and we are so grateful to have her leading our team with that expertise and those connections. Her bio will be appearing in different places, but she brings a tremendous background in campaign management and project management to us in terms of how to build this groundswell. So we're awfully glad to have her on the team. So please, if you don't already have one of us coming to your convention, or even if you do, please get with Lindsay and Liza. They are coordinating, obviously, as the project lead and at the partnership office, but they're the ones coordinating, getting us all the conferences and getting these trainings scheduled. So you see our contact information on the screen. Please get in touch and let us know how we can best help you. We very much want to come out and do the broader presentation for the teams and get those, as many of the frontline staff as at your conferences, and talk to folks and get their expertise. Lindsay, back to you to bring us home.
All right. Well, I don't know where to go from there, Lil. I actually think that I might have a phone number soon. If I think that might be live, so we can add phone numbers to this slide next. I started it 3 weeks ago. And we're still getting things settled. We do really welcome questions and ideas and thoughts, so please reach out to us. If anybody has any additional questions, I'll ask one more time, and then I'll let us all get back to our days. Nothing? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate the attendance, and we look forward to seeing you out in the field.